Welcome to this lecture on working with shapes in iBooks Author. Now, iBooks Author provides you a variety of pre-drawn shapes that you can add to your books. We can access these shapes by clicking on the Shapes pop-up menu from the toolbar. And you can see that there are a number of different types of pre-drawn shapes, things like lines, rectangles with rounded corners, circles, triangles, even speech bubbles and stars. So let's go ahead and spend some time working with these shapes in iBooks Author. And to start with, we're going to take a look at how we work with the lines. I'm actually going to just switch to this blank page so we can see our shapes a little bit better. I'm just going to select a line from the shapes pop-up, and you'll see what it does. It actually just adds the line, or adds that shape to the middle of the page. And in this case, I have two selection handles on either side. I can use the selection handles to obviously resize or rotate this shape. If you hold down the Shift key when you are doing a resize on a shape, it'll constrain its proportions. In the case of a line, what it does is it constrains the rotation, so it gives you every 15 degrees. You can see that right now I'm at a 30-degree angle. I can go to 45. If I want a perfect 90, it's easy to do that if I'm holding the Shift key down. Now, when you have a shape selected, there's a number of attributes, and this varies depending on the shape that you're using, but you can modify those attributes by using the graphics inspector. So if we go to our inspector, we've got a trusty inspector up already, and the graphic inspector again is the one that looks like a rectangle and a circle together. And there's going to be different options depending on the shape that you have selected, but right now we have our line. We can choose the type of line that it is. So maybe we want to have a dotted line. We can choose to have a different color, and there's a number of different ways that we can do that. We can choose from a spectrum. We can choose from a list of swatches. We can have different types of sliders. So if you have a RGB value or a CMYK, maybe you're doing a corporate brochure or a corporate guidebook, and you want to use your own corporate colors, you can just plug in the RGB values and then add them to your custom colors that you can always access and apply to other shapes and other elements. In our case, what we're going to do is actually click on this little eyedropper, and that gives us the ability to get a color from the interface that we see. So this might be trying to pull out colors from an image that you have. In my case, maybe I'll just try to get this green-blue color out of the Statue of Liberty. And now I've applied that to this particular line. Now I can also change the thickness of the stroke for any shape that I'm adding. So I just changed that to 10 points. Now you can see that's affected this particular shape. Let's work with another shape just to see an example. Here's a star shape. Now, when we bring a star shape again, it drops it to the middle of the page, and then I can move it around the way that I want to. I can use the selection handles again to resize this shape. If I start to resize it, you can see that it's actually not constraining the proportions at all. I can stretch it out as much as I want. If I want to keep the original star shape, I can again hold down the Shift key, and that'll constrain the proportions for me. If you always want to constrain the proportions, you can always come into the metrics inspector and you can select the option to constrain proportions, and that way it won't allow you to stretch this object out when you're resizing it. The other thing that you can do when you have the selection handles, if you hold the Command key down, you can actually rotate the shape as well. Okay, and in this particular case, we happen to have a little pop-up that allows us to choose the number of points our star is going to have. And you'll notice in addition to these white handles, we actually have this blue circle, and that can be used to change the length of the points, or change the, I guess, the radius of the circle in the middle of the star. So if we start looking at some of the other shapes, let's bring in a rounded corner rectangle. Again, you'll notice that we've got the same type of blue circle handle that allows us to change a certain attribute that is unique to this particular shape. Let's just delete these and go back to our page. Now, by the way, you'll see that I have a blank page here, and the reason is that the content probably ran over. Maybe there were blank lines at the end of my document that I inserted here. So we'll just hit the delete key and remove that extra page. What I'm going to do instead here is add a shape, add a speech bubble. So I'll just add that to our page. Now you'll notice that this particular shape actually has 3 blue circles that allow me to change the roundedness of the speech bubble. It allows me to change the thickness of the callout line and then the length of the callout line. I can also move where the callout line is rotated around the circle. Now each shape, we didn't look at it in the star and the rectangle, but each shape that has a block, you can add text to that shape simply by double clicking on it. And we'll just go ahead and type in welcome to New York. And again, when you're looking at different shapes, you can always go back to your graphics inspector and see the different properties that you can change. So in this case, we have a solid color fill right now. We can change that to a gradient fill. We can also put in an image instead and fill the shape with an image. We can change the stroke again. In this case, there's no stroke being applied. We can even change it to a picture frame, although I'm not sure why you'd want to do that. Kind of takes away from the effect, so we'll just turn that back to none. We can apply a shadow, of course, and then we can change the opacity of the shape. So lots of different ways that you can work with shapes. Now, if you don't like any of the pre-drawn shapes that iBooks Author gives you, you can actually draw with a pen as well. So there is a pen tool that you can use to draw your own custom shapes. So let me attempt to do that right now. So I've selected the pen tool. I'm going to click once to drop in a point, and I'm going to click again to draw my second point. I'm going to click and hold, and if I drag, you can see that it actually allows me to create a curve. So this is similar to the way that the pen tool works in a tool like Illustrator. I'll go ahead and drop it there. That looks okay. What I'm trying to draw is a red heart, which many of us associate with New York City. So that looks about right. Basically, you can work with shapes in any way that you want. And so you've got a lot of customization capabilities available to you. There's my red heart. Now again, when you're drawing these shapes, you have all of the attributes available to you through the inspector panel. So for example, right now it's not doing any kind of a wrap. So we can just simply add that attribute to the shape so that the text wraps around our heart shape. The same thing for obviously the graphic inspector and the metrics inspector as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and just remove this custom shape, and I'll just show you one other quick thing. I want to make sure that you know that you can actually take one of these pre-drawn shapes and you can edit the shape as well. So if I just make the star a little bit larger, let's say that I want to edit this shape. I kind of like it, but maybe I just want to keep the middle portion, or the half the star only. I can go to my format menu, go down to shape, and then make this editable. So when I do that, I get these red points, and I can select each point. When I select it, you'll notice that it actually turns white. So I can select any point and I can manipulate it. Right? I can make one side of the star a little bit shorter, or if I hit the delete key, it'll actually remove that point altogether. So if I just start removing some points from this existing shape, it'll change the shape. And so now I'm left with half a star. So if you're an artistic, creative type, you can do a lot with the shapes feature in iBooks Author. And that concludes our lecture on shapes.